Okay, awesome. Kirsten Jones, welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast.
Thank you, Erica. I'm so excited to be back. Always fun to chat with you and chop up all things youth sports.
Yes, there's certainly never a dull moment, right? And I do want to get right into our topic today on just pressuring young athletes too early on. But before we get into that, just remind everyone about your work and what you're doing today, because you have done a lot of work with parents and youth athletes. And yeah, just give the listeners a quick reminder.
Sure. So, yes, my name is Kirsten Jones, peak performance and sports parenting coach. I was a D1 volleyball player who played at San Diego State and then William and Mary, and then played overseas a little bit before joining Nike. And I worked for Nike for 15 years. All of that led up to, I think, what I'm doing today, which was having worked with pro athletes and then started raising my own athletes, started seeing my three kids, started seeing what was happening on the sidelines. And it has changed so dramatically in the last 30 years that I don't think any of us recognize it. And what used to be roll the ball out and let's have some fun has become super competitive at a very young age. I wrote the book that I wanted to read or wish was around when my kids were young, Raising Empowered Athletes. So how do we raise not only strong, athletes, but more importantly, kind, resilient, happy, well-adjusted kids? So that's what I talk about on my podcast, hashtag Raising Athletes, and why I love collaborating with you, Erica, and people like you who are trying to help bring a voice to this is nuts. This has gotten way out of control, and our kids are suffering from it. They really are, and we need to make some changes.
So let's talk about how out of control things have gotten. So
Oprah's most famous, I'm sure she's got several, but parenting coach is Dr. Shivali Sabari. And she has the best quote about parenting, which is, it is the most egoic thing we can do as humans is have a child, right? So we make this mistake of conflating our image, our success, our way in the world with what my progeny does. And I think so much of the outcomes that are so focused, which by the way, I can 100% tell you that 9-year-old has no idea what Division I soccer. She doesn't know what she wants for dinner. She does not want to play D1 soccer. She wants to play with her friends. She wants to have fun. Right now, she's having a great time. She likes soccer because that's where all of her girlfriends are. Maybe she is really competitive. Maybe she likes, but us projecting what a child wants 9 years from now, when they don't know what they want 9 minutes from now, is way too much pressure for these kids. And I have found that there are some parents I got mansplained to the other day. Like, he came with his ideas about what he wanted his son to experience. And then when I tried to give him the advice, he didn't really want the advice. So listen to the experts around, again, maybe she does become the fastest athlete, but she doesn't like soccer anymore in 2, 3, 5 years, right? So we're not raising athletes for this minute or for the next 5 minutes. What we know is that athletes that are, and particularly women who are active at age 23, dictates the habits that they'll have for the rest of their life. And more than her, we don't want her to burn out and be the best soccer player ever in high school or college and never want to participate in any activities again. We want her to fall in love with it. And actually, you want them pulling, you want them asking for more, give me more, give me more. I think our job is to be that balance for them.
I think you make such a good point that this 9-year-old, it might not even be her dream. You don't hear a lot of 9-year-olds say, I want to play D1, because they don't really know what that is. But I've seen maybe 1 to 2 outliers in my coaching career where I've heard some girls say that young. And look, it's great. It's great to have big aspirations and reach for the stars. And if you're motivated, that's amazing. And I think some people would make the argument, well, how can you tell a girl not to dream big? But that's not what we're saying here. It's just not always keeping that outcome in mind, but just enjoying that process?
I think probably more what's happening is you watched a soccer game together and you as a parent see her excited about it and you're like, "Gosh, would you like to do that one day?" And she says, "Yes." That's awesome, right? And sure, like and of course I want to make you happy, dad. So they're happy to check both of those boxes. And yes, there are outliers that they watch every video, they're really into it, they're super goal oriented. And whether they're the best athlete or not, I 100% think you should be encouraging them. I had one client who her son was a fencer and she called to say she's like he's not very good, should I support him in doing this? And that's not the point. The point isn't them being the best, the point is them doing their best. And when they really focus on that, whenever they pivot, ps we all have to pivot at some point, whenever they pivot they're going to take everything they learned from that experience, particularly if it was a positive one. But if becomes a negative, this is not what I want to be doing. This is a job and a chore. And maybe we'll get into that, talking about how these kids are burning out so early because I was doing a talk here in Los Angeles this week, and the woman came up to me after and she goes, I know there's now clubs that have 3U soccer, like club. Are you hearing that? Like
Yes,
that's
the
nuts.
age groups keep getting younger and younger, and I think it is a cash cow for sure. I think
Yeah.
it's easy to market to parents of young ones because of FOMO and just having a place for your young kid to go to be occupied and to make friends and socialize, which I get. That's really great for young kids, but for it to be this very serious structured thing that young, that's where I have to ask questions.
Yeah. No, rec, absolutely. And absolutely have them organized and let them go play and that's all great. But no, we're not. I mean, even I coached 8 and 9U volleyball and we're gonna take the team to Vegas. No, we're not. Like 9-year-olds don't need to, and we lived in Buffalo and they were taking the 5-year-olds to Canada. Okay, yes, it's only a 3-hour drive, but we don't need to go to Canada to play 5U hockey. Like we can just play with each other, and that's the part that is, I think, the trickle down of the professionalization of youth sports. That's why they're burning out, that's why they're having mental, physical, emotional breakdowns.
You've mentioned, I think it was in the last podcast we did, how the U12 national championship, it is kind of irrelevant. It's not the most important thing in the world. And I've said that to some parents as well. Some people have had some very interesting rebuttals to that, which I do want to get into today, but they'll argue and throw back at me, well, they're still learning life lessons at these competitive events. And you always say life lessons are important, Erica. So they're kind of using ammunition against me and take the words out of what I've said before, which is very clever. But let's talk about it. So, why is it not still the best idea to be in these very serious tournaments and showcases and national championships at these really young ages, despite them learning life lessons and having fun still?
If that's your end all be all, if that's how you want to spend all of your dollars and you have a lot of extra dollars and a lot of extra time, fine, right? And there are going to be people that's them and their kid, they're sure their kid's going pro, and that's awesome. And we wish them good luck. But I believe most parents are doing the best they can and they really want to get the answers to make sure that these first 18 years they have with them are are managed in a way that is fun for the child. I like to talk about at some point your child will be telling a story of their childhood, of the memories they have. And do we want all of the memories to only be about, well, yeah, I had to fly cross country when I was 8 or 9 because there was this tournament, right? Like those are not the ways we can stay and play locally and be competitive and learn all the lessons. We don't need to be going to, and the national champions is a total money grab. Like it's a way for those, and that's what's happening is now you're having private equity firms buy clubs because the money is there because the parents will pay. And the only way for us to start to unravel that big giant hairball is to not buy into it. Is to say, and if I can jump in here with a story, but literally this morning, right before we jumped on, I had a client who's out in New York and she's like, can we have a quick call? And her 10-year-old daughter is a very good athlete. She plays competitive soccer. She also plays flag football and she plays basketball and she loves all three of them. And she said, we're starting to get pressure that we have to, they want her dual rostering. They want her playing up. In 2 years, she's going to be going up, now they're 9v9, but they're going to be going to 11v11. So they want to start transitioning the girls and they want to expose her to more. What do we say? And I said, what do you as a family want? Well, we want her to keep playing all the sports because she loves all the sports and she's 10. I said, I think that's a great answer. And what I'm seeing on the other side of that, and again, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube when they're 15 and they're 16 and they are only focused on one sport and they need to be doing that 13 months a year. I'm seeing them really tired and really exhausted and burned out. And, I've got one athlete now who's 15. She's dual rostered and she's playing varsity and she's running track. And she gets on the call and she's just like, oh, I took yesterday off. Oh, you took yesterday off? Well, I didn't go to both practices. I only went to one. So parents, I think it comes back to what are our values? What do we want our kids to get out of this experience? And then, at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I think all the way up to 13, but for sure up to 11 or 12, be resisting the urge to just, oh, this is great. Oh, she's really good. Oh, we'll put her we'll have her play up a year or two. If that's your only thing and that's all you really want, that's fine. But for most of us, if your kid's playing multiple sports, which I highly recommend for as long as they can so that they can learn exactly as you were saying, Erica, the body control and body motion, and all of that comes by having fun, by playing tag and by playing things that keep them interested in coming back, not by doing hours and hours and hours and hours of repetitive drills.
That burnout is so real. And I do think a lot of parents are in denial about it, even though the studies are very clear. I think people just ignore that that could happen to their kid because right now everything's great. They seem to be having fun. They seem to be smiling out there on the field. But I don't think a lot of parents are checking in with their kids. I know you mentioned last time to have those check-ins often. So how often and how should parents go about that?
Well, and here's the other side of it too, Erica, which is a problem, which is we are having fun, right? So we are just as invested, and that's become our social community. I mean, long gone is the day. We're not going to church on Sunday. We don't have time for that. We're not getting together with the girls because we're those become our best friends too. So I understand why it's, A, we're paying a lot of money. B, those become our communities. My third just graduated from high school. I am missing it. I admit it. That becomes an extended family to you. Regarding check-ins, again, you have a kid, and I've had multiple athletes where the parents are like, no, 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 at 8, they told me they wanted to play, on this team, or they wanted to, my son wanted to go play at Duke. Well, sure, every kid wants to go play basketball at Duke, right? And then you realize, okay, there's 500,000 kids playing basketball. Okay, this many will get to play in 250,000 will play in high school. Less than 0.0001 will play at Duke, right? So they don't know what the math is because they shouldn't know what the math is. They should just be enjoying their sport. But the check-ins come as they start to realize that the pyramid, going to the top is getting steeper and steeper. Again, they may still have the passion. Okay, but maybe I'm not a high major player. Maybe I'm a mid. Hey, I'm a high academic kid, right? Like, I really want to go somewhere where I can play D3, get a great education. Like, the world is bigger than just that one aspect of their lives. And that's what we want them to have. I have an athlete right now who's a basketball player, and his parents aren't from the United States, and they're like, we don't understand this. This is kind of crazy. But all the parents seem to be, they all have the coach's number. They're all texting the coach all the time. They're trying to get, more in with the coach. Meanwhile, we have our son going and volunteering, with the kids in the wheelchairs, and he's coaching basketball, and he has to be in the wheelchair when he coaches. And he comes home and he's like, Mom, I am so lucky. I'm just so grateful that I get to play basketball at all, right? Those are some of the lessons we want them to get out of the sport, giving back, learning that the game is bigger than themselves, and realizing, yes, maybe I have the talent, but maybe I don't have the grades. Maybe I don't have the talent, but I do have the grades, and I can get into a better school, and I can walk on somewhere, right? There's 1,000 ways this could play out. But for our younger ones, which we're focused on, is don't start projecting what you want or think they might want to do. Enjoy this moment. Be here now. Enjoy that we all get to be together, that we all get to do these fun trips together. But deciding that they're going to play in college or that they even want to play past middle school, I think is too much.
You're so right. There are so many ways this can all play out. And for a kid that's 9 or 10 years old, we have no clue what's going to happen talent wise, physically, mentally after their growth spurt, when they get into puberty and fully mature, when they're age 16 or 17. Maybe they'll turn into an amazing player, or maybe they'll take a complete 180 and say, I'm not really passionate about soccer anymore. And to push that on a 9-year-old, it's so hard because you just don't know. There's so many years ahead and anything can happen. And you'll find this interesting, Kirsten. I actually had a 16-year-old girl's dad call me the other day, and she decided not to go out for the high school soccer team. And she wanted to focus on doing videography and cinema at school. And that didn't mean she was going to stop training with me. She actually was worried I wouldn't train her still because she wasn't really doing as much soccer. And I was like, look, this is not just about sport performance. What you're doing in the gym is it's about being active and learning how to challenge yourself and do strength training for life. It's not just for athletes. I do it as a retired athlete still. And I just thought it was really cool that despite decreasing her soccer, she still wanted to do strength training because she loved training and she saw that it was just bigger than soccer. And I just thought that was such a really cool phone call to have.
73% of C-suite women played sports. It doesn't say they played sports through college. It doesn't say they played sports even through high school, but they see themselves as athletes, which gives you more confidence, which means you'll take greater risks, which means you're willing to put yourself out there. We want to raise athletes for life who say, okay, maybe I don't want to compete. Even in high school, my daughter did the same thing. Senior year of high school, she's like, I don't want to play volleyball on the high school team. That's fine. She still wants to go work out in the gym. In fact, I met, similar story, I met with one of her teammates and the daughter's at SMU. She's not playing volleyball. She was a phenomenal athlete, but she just didn't love it that much to play in college. She wants to do nutrition. So she's studying nutrition and her internship is with the football team. And she's like, the daughter was so excited when she's like, Mom, I get access to all the weight room and all the nutrition that all the athletes have. So I get to work out all the time. I get to be with the athletes and I get to be, so she's pivoted, but she's using everything that she's learned. That's what this whole journey is about.
I want to come back to being able to learn life lessons at all levels. And one thing I see with the young ones is their parents are being convinced that if their 9 or 10-year-old is not on the best team at that age, they're going to fall behind. Or some parents will make the argument, well, we learn more life lessons on that best team. But I'd argue, well, if you're on a team that's a losing team, man, can you learn life lessons there to maybe become a leader and raise the morale of your team and to work hard for something meaningful? I mean, just because you're on the best team doesn't mean you're going to reap all these benefits or you're going to get ahead of everyone else. I mean, there are lessons to be learned at all levels. And if you're playing rec at age 9, that's amazing. That doesn't mean you're not ever going to play in college or you're not going to learn any life lessons. So, yeah, it's just crazy the lies that the young ones' parents are being sucked into. And I hate to see it.
I think you're right. I think it is. It's what they're marketed. And so, again, it's part of the FOMO. So, if we tell you you're going to be behind, then you're going to pay the money to get in so that you feel like you're doing the right thing. And again, I don't think the parents are just doing what they're told, right, is the way to help their child. But 0% of college coaches are asking, now, what team were you on as a freshman? Right? Like, when, at what year did you become, a star? They don't care about any of that. They'll ask you what other sports you play. They're going to ask you what other interests you have. And I actually was just with the Long Beach State women's basketball coach last night, who's coached in the Power Five for the last 20 years. She's one of the best recruiters, Amy Wright. She's amazing. And I was asking her about recruiting and everything. And she said, yeah, those girls that I said, what's the number one thing you ask them when you're recruiting them? She's like, I want to know their why. Why do you play? Why is this important to you? Because that will tell me everything about, you know, how I'm going to motivate them. And if they're motivatable, or if they say, well, I play because my dad really wanted me to play, it's a giveaway. And she said, and then I always ask, what are your other interests? Some of our team are bakers. She says some of them like music, some of them are into art. And she's like, we need them to have other interests. We can't just have, robots that are only playing basketball. That is not going to make us an interesting team. In fact, they just had the Long Beach State golf team and the basketball team, women's teams, went and did each other's sports. So they brought the golf team into the gym and they shot baskets, and they took the basketball team out. And she's like, we got to cross pollinate. We got to think differently. Like if the more you're having to realize, oh, as a golfer, I have to think about every single shot. Whereas a basketball player, next. They're totally different strategies. But what if I can incorporate some of both into my game? That makes me a better athlete.
Well, I love that the coach asks what their why is. I think
Yes.
in a world of clicks and likes and social media and comparison and posting about your achievements, it's very easy to forget your why.
Yes.
It's
And that's what it's
easy to
getting.
forget that meaning of your sport.
And I think so many of these kids have been told their why,
Mm.
because I want you to play in college, because you said at 8 you really love this, because like it's something that it's rote, but you can tell when a child says it versus when they really mean it, and how they show up and how they engage. And she's like, you got to take the parents out of it, and you got to find out for the kid. She also told the story of going to recruit a kid. She had to fly like 5 hours to Georgia. She was in Texas, and watched the child play. And then she started asking her questions. And apparently the dad was like, mortified because she wasn't prepared and anything. And, she kind of humiliated herself. And she said the athlete called her and said, I'm so sorry. I know I did not perform well. Would you still consider recruiting me? And she said, if you do the work, if you get prepared, if you have your questions, if you're ready for me, I will fly back out there. And I said, so how did it end up? She said, oh, I went back out there. She had all of her notes. She was really ready. She wanted it. And her why was strong. She just wasn't prepared. She wasn't ready for the moment. But I mean, good on the coach for giving her a second shot. And then I said, and what happened to her? Oh, all SEC player of the year. She's playing in the WNBA. Like, she did fine. I'm like, yeah, she did fine, right? But that was her why was really strong. And again, we're not asking them to do it perfectly. And again, the great coaches will see that. They just want to know that you're in it for the right reasons, so that you can enjoy it. I mean, it's supposed to be fun.
I do want to talk about just pushing the college dream too young as well. What's really interesting in the college recruiting landscape now is there's a lot of changes happening with new roster limits in the soccer world. They're decreasing the roster size, so it's definitely making it more competitive. And the transfer portal is coming into play, and a lot of college coaches are preferring transfers and graduate students over high school recruits. So it's making it even harder. And I think this new landscape, it sucks for the players that are going through it. And it sucks for all the young ones who have these dreams, or parents who have these dreams. But I think it's going to force people to have another why other than college.
I agree. And I think, yes, what you're seeing is it's I the quote the statistics the NC2A puts out pre-COVID, less than 7% will play D1, D2, D3. I think it's probably closer to 4 to 5% now with COVID, with the transfer portal, with NIL. It's really, really crunched it down. And getting recruited out of high school becomes even that much harder because you're absolutely right. They can go into the portal, they can pick somebody who has now 1, 2, 3 years experience. I'm a coach who needs to perform. So right now, and I know this is the last year of the COVID kids getting to play, but SMU's volleyball team is 6 grad transfers, and they just beat the number 1 and the number 2 teams in the country, right? Well, yeah, when everybody's 24 and you're playing against a lot of 18 to 20-year-olds, like it's a different level. It's because if you've been doing it right, you are, and particularly women. I mean, they say the best marathoners peak in their late 30s, right? Like, in fact, most runners' bodies, we've tried to starve them to the point that they're not even able to perform in college, because that was the theory, was you had to be thin. And in fact, it's the opposite, is we need to get them through their 20s so that they can actually really perform. Their best years are actually ahead of them. And we shouldn't look at it as the top of the mountain is at 22. Like, it's a much flatter line. And again, if we're doing it right, we're allowing them to go through puberty and all of these stages with ups and downs in growth, physical, mental, emotional, that allow them to come to the other side of it. And maybe it is. I've got a client whose son there's an app you can meet up to play soccer in New York City. Like, that's success, because now you're doing it for social, we're doing it for physical health, we're doing it for mental health, and you've got a full-time job. Like, that's when you really need it. But if you burned out at 10 or 12 and you never want to touch a ball again, we lost.
So you're a parent. How did you do it? Especially when your kids were really young. I know it was a little bit different back then, but I think it was still getting a little bit crazy.
We avoided club until 6th grade, so 12. We stayed only in rec sports. We also were moving around a bit. So I don't know where we were when the kids were in that 9 to 12. Club wasn't as big of a deal. So it was easier to avoid. So I know when you're in these bigger markets, it's hard because they come at you really fast. It was when we moved to Los Angeles that club soccer was the only option. He aged out of AYSO, and it was kind of forced upon you. And honestly, within a year, he quit and he never touched a soccer ball again because he had such a traumatic experience from the coach. And I was just grateful that it was my middle son that he had basketball. There are some parents that, again, that's also what I like to say. You never know when you're going to run into a brick wall of a bad coaching situation, a health issue, something that says, it's time to pivot. And what we want is them thinking, not only I only do this one thing. Sorry, forgive me if I've already told this story, but one fun example that I think we as parents think they have to do it really seriously or they shouldn't do it at all. But when we were living in San Diego, my oldest was 9. And I'm like, we're living in San Diego, we should go surfing. So we all took a 3 days of surf camp. And my 9-year-old was, I don't want to do this, right? I'm a basketball player. And I got one actual picture, it was even before we had a cell phone, of him on a surfboard, like, and the cutest thing, right? And on we go. He never touches the surfboard again until COVID. And now he can't go in a gym, and now he can't shoot around. And we're living in Los Angeles, and some of his buddies go, come on, let's go surfing. And I hear him on the phone the one day, yeah, I picked up surfing again. I did it as a kid, right? He did it one time. So parents, we have this idea that, oh, well, we have to pay for lessons, and he has to do it a long time, and he has to get really proficient. No, he doesn't. Like, allow them to try the different things. They may or may not like it then. Like, I had mine play baseball. I personally am not a huge baseball fan because they were standing around most of the day and they weren't getting exercise. I wanted them coming home exhausted. And my husband's like, you actually coached our sons out of baseball. I'm like, yeah, I'd rather have them running up and down the soccer field or the basketball court so that at least they're tired, But try all the things. And again, in the back of their mind, they played some flag football. In the back of their mind, they play football. They've tried piano. They were They also introduced them to music very early, which they all, full organ rejection. But now in their 20s, my husband works in the music business, but now they're like, Dad, why don't we play guitar? Let's play guitar. And now they're learning guitar and they love it. And my daughter plays ukulele. But we've got to give them other, it's a buffet. And I think our job is to offer them different options and not decide at 5, I love soccer. He's going to love soccer. His destiny is soccer. Maybe.
I love that. You always have to have other interests and other things going for you because anything can happen in life. A pandemic could hit the world and you got to be like, "All right, what am I going to do now? All right, I'm going to surf." I think that's just such a great example of just it's amazing to have that adaptability. And if a kid is just doing soccer or just basketball since a young age, will they learn to be malleable in life? And will they be able to understand different environments or how to work with different people or have different leadership and coaches? I mean, there's just so much to get out of trying so many things. And it's not going to hinder the quote unquote primary sport that you want them to play. It's actually going to enhance their skills in that sport. And you mentioned your sons played rec for a while. You said till age 12.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
But
so I get this argument a lot too because I played rec till I was 13, 14 years old and still turned out okay, I guess. But people will say, "Well, Erica."
Johns Hopkins. Yeah, you did fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People always say, "Well, Erica, times are different now." What would you say to that?
Yeah, no, I call BS on that. You need, again, it's about what we're under the age of 13. We want to focus on friends, fun, and fundamentals. You want to get them with a coach who's going to inspire them to have a good time, is going to focus on getting them all good playing time. When I first started, uh, actually was at my book launch, a dad came up hat in hand and said, I'm coaching my 7U baseball team and my wife thinks I'm doing it wrong. And I said, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, I don't let everybody play because some of the kids aren't very good. I'm like, they're 7, right? Everybody plays. There's no way you can, and I hear that a lot here in Los Angeles. A kid got cut from 6U baseball because they were already projecting what the 9U team was going to be, and he wasn't good enough, and so he had to go to another rec system in order. Like that's ridiculous. And I maybe I said this before, but I'll say it again. I feel like these clubs are touting their reputation on we're the national champions. We got these many medals. I think we should be the scorecard should be against how many kids signed up the next year. Because if the kid likes it enough, had fun, enjoyed, learned something, made some friends, they're going to want to try it again. And the best athletes, Steph Curry, LeBron, all of these guys played all the things when they were little and didn't start specializing. Most of them, okay, there are anomalies, but that's the problem. The anomalies become the shining example of everybody needs to be like Tiger. No, that's literally a needle in a haystack. 92% of NFL athletes played multiple sports. At Nike, it was always I worked on global footwear. So I never worked directly with any of the pro athletes, but I was around, all the people that were, and I was in merchandising. And, when you go to design a shoe with a pro athlete, what are they looking for? Well, Jordan, they would like that. I met with the director of design and he's like, I got to go fly in a stealth plane because Michael was into, low to the ground and he had some are opera stars really into opera or really into fashion or really into music or really into like they all had really into golf. Like Jordan wanted these elements into his shoe. They were multifaceted people who happened to love this one thing and happened to get really good at this one thing, but it was because of their multiple interests that made them so good at what they did.
Now, just to close, what advice would you give to parents right now who have really young kids before age 12?
Keep it fun. If you are a coach, and some parents get the opportunity to do that, be first and foremost an instructor that's going to give them some opportunities to grow, but not be trying to figure out how to get your kid on the top team, and not be figuring out how your team can win at all costs. We want them, most of the time, what I see is by the time the kids got to the car, they've forgotten about it. It's us parents that are so invested, overly so, in the outcome. Most of the time, there's a great, I don't know if you haven't read it, Andre Agassi's book, Open, is phenomenal. And if you read it, what is staggering is he lost and then he lost again. And then like 60% of it, same Steph Curry, all of those stats, 60% of the time he misses. Okay, so over half the time he's missing. He's the best 3-point shooter in the world. And he misses more than he makes. Yet we spend all of our time, we need the win, we need the trophy, we need the first, we need to be the starter. Some of the best athletes I've seen, they were on the second team or the third team. Actually, that's a gift because you get some grit. You get a chance to challenge yourself. You probably get more playing time, which competence leads to confidence. If you're on the top team, but you're sitting on the bench and you never get on the floor, that's not going to make you a better player. So enjoying the moment for your little ones. If you are one of those people that you just can't help yourself, talk to the neighbor, go take a lap, ask your spouse to take them, but don't, try to even just notice yourself, like fly over the bench and go, am I behaving in a way that I would want my kid to, my opening story in my book is a dad who paid to fly a plane over his son's baseball game. I don't think he's a bad dad, but I think it's hurtful to your child to say the only thing that matters is that my kid plays. No, there's so many other lessons that he's going to get out of that. And some of the best, entrepreneurs, the biggest, I can't remember his name, but the biggest donor to Michigan State basketball never left the bench, but he loved basketball. And they said, then he went on to make $1 billion and now he, gives back. Those are the people with the grit because they've faced some adversity. Adversity isn't a bad thing. We've given it a bad name and we've tried, we want to try to flatten the road. Let them have some bumps. And particularly when they're with us, that's the best time for them to have some dark nights of the soul. Just don't jump in the hole with them. Stand by them and say, I'm sorry that happened to you. How can I support you right now? I don't know. Just give me the night, Dad. Okay. We can talk about it tomorrow. And if tomorrow you say, hey, you want to talk about the game? Nah, let it go.
I love it. And you give such great advice in your book, Raising Empowered Athletes, which I will link in the caption below. So if you have not gotten it yet after my first episode with Kirsten, please make sure you get it. If you are a sports parent to really young kids, it is like your guidebook to everything you're going through. And I know there is a lot in this episode, a lot of you can relate to. So we really hope this helped. And I will see you on the next episode.